The new Bronco's been out for a few years now, and it has not been without its problems. We're going to talk about those problems in today's video. We're also going to talk about how to keep your Bronco on the road for as long as possible. And I'm going to give you guys practical advice as to which package you should purchase on the Bronco. I'll include a link to the Tim Daly Ford's website in the description down below. They're providing us with the Bronco. Let's get into it. We're going to start off by going over the transmissions. There's a 10-speed automatic and a 7-speed manual available with this new Bronco. Now, the manual actually hasn't been all that problematic. I think part of it is because of the volume difference. Most Broncos are equipped with a 10-speed, whereas very few Broncos are equipped with a manual, so fewer transmissions out in the world, you're going to see fewer issues. The 10-speed, just like the 10-speed in the F-150, has been problematic. Some people have very painful shift points. Basically, the transmission will be very harsh with the shifting. And there's also been transmission failures as well. It's not a bunch of the Broncos, but it is definitely something to look out for. I will say I do have hope for this 10-speed transmission because, again, it's in the Bronco, it's in the F-150, it's also in a lot of GM vehicles, and so Ford and GM, they're going to figure something out to make the transmission reliable, you'd think. Now when it comes to engines, the first one is a turbo 2.3 liter 4-cylinder. And there's honestly not a whole lot to say about the powertrain. It's also in the Ford Ranger, and it's a pretty robust powertrain. Again, outside of the transmission, the 2.3, as long as you do the regular maintenancing, it'll treat you well. It's been pretty good. It was also in the Ford Focus RS. That was tuned up a bit, but Ford's had the powertrain for quite some time, and they've been able to make it a robust powertrain. The next is the 2.7 liter V6, and I'll also lump the 3.0 V6 into this because the 3.0 is basically just a modified 2.7 liter V6. The 2.7 has been in the F-150 for years, and just like the 2.3, it's been shown to be robust and reliable. It's a good powertrain overall. It can have some oil leak issues, so just be aware of it. As long as you do regular maintenance thing, you're going to have someone look at it and make sure that's not happening. And the thing with Fords is if you catch something early on, it's typically a very inexpensive, easy fix. It's when you let something go for a long time that it ends up massively snowballing and becoming a lot more expensive. So the 2.7, just like the 2.3, pretty good. It's the transmission that'll probably cause you some issues. And then the 3.0, it's not as reliable. It's pushing so much power. The engine's under a lot more stress. It's good. It's just not as good as the 2.7. So if reliability is your worry, the 2.7 is going to treat you better than the 3.0 that's in the Bronco Raptor. So my recommendation to all of you, if you want to keep your engine as reliable as possible, 5,000 miles for the service intervals. You want to keep clean fluids with this powertrain. If you do heavy off-roading, if you live in extreme climate, you might want to do every 3,000 to 4,000 miles just to keep things running smoothly. And the thing is, the cost to do this is actually not all that bad. Most dealerships have oil change packages that are very affordable, especially with an American car like the Bronco. And so I would expect to spend similar to what I've spent on these cars for years, which is roughly about $100 per year with one of those like oil change packages. Some of them are a little bit more expensive nowadays, but they're typically pretty affordable. I'm trying to hit 500,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I'd really appreciate it if you'd help out with that. Now let's quickly talk about some good things with the new Bronco before we get into some more dirt. The suspension system on the Bronco has actually been shown to be pretty durable overall. There have been some issues with people having tie rods break off-road. So what I would say is I would just take your Bronco off-road and just deal with the stock tie rods until they break, and then once they break, just consider doing an upgrade to something that's a little bit thicker, a little bit more durable. It's not cheap, but there's a lot of other things that could go wrong that are a lot more expensive. And when it comes to off-roading, I'll give you guys a recommendation in terms of which packages you should look into if you actually plan on using your Bronco for what it was intended for. Now, there have been some people citing paint defects, but this is pretty much every single new car. It's rare that I see a new car that was actually painted well, so this is just kind of par for the course. And these new tops are also painted, so it's just something to be aware of. Something else is general fitment. You'll notice that some things on these new Broncos won't line up super well. Now, normally this is not an issue. It's more of an aesthetic thing where you're annoyed because the door panel is a little bit off or the hard top is a little bit off. And so most of the time it's just purely cosmetic. However, the Bronco top has been known to leak, and so it could become a much more serious issue. Again, if you have this happen, you want to get it fixed sooner rather than later so you don't get more damage. But one benefit of this Bronco is the fact that it is a convertible, whereas most other modern vehicles are not, obviously. So if you do get a roof leak with a Bronco, it's not going to be as detrimental compared to if you got a roof leak with a regular car, because with the Bronco, the top's meant to be taken off, and so they don't put a lot of important components up top, whereas a lot of modern cars have a ton of wires running through the roof, and there's just a lot of stuff that can get corroded or just rusted out in general. Again, water a lot of times will pull up, and so this being a convertible, again, leaking can be an issue, but it's not as bad as if you have a regular car that leaks, because then you got a lot of rust to deal with, and that's never good. Now, another issue people have had are these frameless windows. You'll note when I close the door, the window obviously pops up, and it'll do the same thing here in the back. People have had window misalignments, and not only can this cause leaking, it can also cause quite a bit of noise, wind noise, right? You're gonna get little kind of swirls of wind coming in. Not as bad as a roof leak, but still annoying, and it is something that you should definitely fix, because if you're constantly opening and closing a door and the window's misaligned, it's going to wear on the seals here over time, which is going to potentially cause other leaking issues down the road. And so yes, if that isn't closed properly, I'd get that fixed. But other than that, the rest of the exterior seems to be pretty solid, seems to be holding up pretty darn well, so let's pop inside. Now, Ford built out the interior of the Bronco to be very durable and very rugged, and so people haven't really had issues with premature wear and tear. The interior's held up pretty well for a modern car. But what's not holding up as well is, well, the electronics. So prior, the Broncos had a partial digital, partial analog gauge cluster. Now it's full digital in the Broncos. And then we've got a huge infotainment system. You can have general glitches with both of these systems. Basically, screens not turning on properly or not responding as they should. And same thing can happen with the gauge cluster, but that's not the big electrical problem. The bigger problem is actually associated with the off-road stuff, so the drive modes, and this is something that I experienced in my Bronco Raptor as a 2023. So if you don't know, with these GOAT modes, you change the drive mode and it'll actually adjust things with the car. So for example, if I put it in sand mode right here, it automatically puts it in four-wheel drive high, and if I put it in rock mode, it would put it in four-wheel drive low. It also does stuff like turn on the front camera automatically, and it even changes the look of the gauge cluster. But suffice to say, some of this stuff doesn't come on under normal operation. So like the front camera might not turn on, the gauge cluster might not change, the car might not shift into four-wheel drive high. And furthermore, you might have a situation similar to what I had in my Bronco Raptor, where I took it out of rock crawl mode back into Baja mode, and the car refused to change drive modes. Now, I was able to manually take the car out of four-wheel drive low, so I was able to drive on the street and everything after I was done with my off-roading, but I was not able to take it out of the rock crawl mode. The entire time, the computer programming continued to think that I was in rock crawl mode, and nothing I did let me take it out of that. So if you're twisting this dial right here and it's not actually changing the drive mode, the best thing to do is just turn off your vehicle. Once you've turned it off, get out, lock the car, and then, you know, the best thing to do sometimes is just to wait a couple minutes so the computer can do a hard reset. You don't necessarily have to do that, but unlock the car, get back in, and then everything should start up. One downside though is some of these electrical issues can be parasitic on the battery. And so I would make sure that you're not doing this out in the middle of nowhere, that you at least get to where there's some people, so that if the battery for some reason, as soon as you turn off the car, just completely drains out, which again, probably not gonna happen, but could potentially happen, that you're not stranded, that you can have someone come and give you a jump. So as long as you properly maintain your Bronco, all that you'll likely experience is potentially a leak that you can definitely get fixed, and then some electrical gremlins that might pop up here and there, but the car itself should run strong for many years to come. So let's go for a short drive, and I'll give you guys my advice in terms of packaging that you should go for with the new Bronco based on what you're gonna be using the Bronco for. Now this Bronco is pretty interesting. This is in Outer Banks, not Sasquatch, but it has the 2.7 V6. And that's one of the things that I think is really confusing about the Broncos. There's a ton of different packages. Now this dealer, you know, Broncos are actually selling quite well right now. This dealer doesn't have a lot of Broncos on the lot because they're all pretty much sold out. So there's not a lot for me to show you, so I figured we just go for a little drive and I'll talk about packaging and everything on this new Bronco. So here's the deal. If you're not gonna do any off-roading whatsoever, you have to decide how much you care about having crazy, aggressive looks that the 35-inch tall tires provide. Because if you don't care that much, something like this makes way more sense. You're gonna get better fuel economy, easier to get in and out of. Tires are gonna be less expensive to replace. It's just gonna make a bit more sense in terms of long-term ownership. And again, if you're not gonna off-road, you don't need the bigger tires. Like, I always find it funny when people have these huge lifted vehicles and they never take them off-road. It's like, you're paying such a big premium for that, for something that you're never going to use. I get it, you like the looks. So, the Big Bend, I think that is probably one of the best packages on the Bronco for people that are gonna be mall crawling with these. You can get it with off-road tires, you can get it with a painted top. It's got pretty much all the features you need, nothing you don't need. It's a really nice package. It looks great on the outside. It's solid overall. So that would be the one that I'd say for the street people. That's the best one to get. For off-roaders, it depends. So if we're talking, you know, you're going to be off-roading and on a regular basis and doing some difficult trails, yeah, you're going to want to go Sasquatch, right? You're going to want the clearance, because the 33-inch tall tires with independent front suspension, clearance is going to be a problem. So base model Sasquatch or Heritage Edition, that's going to be the sweet spot for people that actually off-road, because it's more affordable, gives you the diff locks front rear. Now, if you're going to be like extreme off-roading, you're probably going to have to go up to a Badlands. In Badlands Sasquatch, if you're going to spend that much money, you might as well spend the extra couple $1,000s and get the Fox shocks. It's probably going to be about a $70,000+ build, but you're going to have the stabilizer bar disconnect, diff locks front and rear, Fox shocks. That is, in terms of like packages in the Bronco, one of the coolest that you can get. So that's great. The Bronco Raptor, at this point, I think it's kind of useless. An F-150 Raptor does a better job at high-speed off-roading than a Bronco Raptor, and then the Badlands Sasquatch with the Fox shocks is a better rock crawler than a Bronco Raptor because it's narrower and it still has really good dampening from the Fox shocks. So I would say if you're actually it's back here, if you're going to be doing extreme off-roading, I still think that Bronco is more than enough. If you can do high-speed off-roading, a Raptor is going to be a better fit for you. An F-150 Raptor is going to be a better fit for you. I don't think people shouldn't buy the Bronco Raptor. It's still a cool vehicle. I think it just needs some tuning and everything to make it a little bit better at what it's trying to accomplish. Now 2.3 versus 2.7 depends on how big the tires are. If you're going to go big tires, you're going to want to get the 2.7. So the 2.3 can move them, but your fuel economy is the same. So you might as well have the more powerful engine. You might as well have the better acceleration if you're going to get the same fuel economy. Now, if you're going to get smaller tires like a Big Bend, yeah, the 2.3 is more than adequate enough. So small tires 2.3, big tires 2.7. So that's kind of how I look at it package-wise. I think all the in-between packages, like the regular Badlands and this Outer Banks, they're kind of useless in my opinion. I think the baseline's really good. The Badlands Sasquatch with the Fox shocks is really good as well. The Heritage Edition's really good. The Sasquatch base model is really good. Everything else is just kind of random fluff. Let me know your thoughts.